In the summer of 1996, there were few job opportunities for a wet-behind-the-ears recent high school graduate in Carroll County, unless you were skilled in mechanic work or didn't mind the endless tedium of factory labor. Neither of these applied to me. So, exactly 1 week after the commencement ceremonies were over and I had seen one of my best friends off to the Navy, I walked into the sweltering kitchen of the Hardee's in Huntington. That restaurant would, for the next 2.5 years, be my place of employment while I attended college. Most days there I toiled through the breakfast shift, easily the busiest time of day for that place. So, for the most part, my coworkers were older than me, and all of them were memorable. There was Casey, whose sole purpose for working at Hardee's was to save up enough to get away from his mother, who had begun to demand from him money for rent and utilities as well as new handbags and jewelry. There was Ellie, from Germany, who met her American husband while he was stationed at the military base near her home, and who had once issued robust laughter when I mentioned Tennessee's bicentennial celebrations, because the small town in which she had grown up had recently celebrated its 1200th year. There was an extremely obese woman named Linda, who was also an habitual liar. She once sat across from me during our break with a hamburger, a large order of fries, a fried chicken breast and leg, a biscuit, and a large Coke sitting on the table between us, and said to me, "I have that problem they talk about on TV where you keep eating and can't stop. So last month I got my stomach stapled. Everybody said I was crazy, but I had to. I was killing myself. Now I can't eat near as much as I used to could. In fact, I can't eat much at all before I'm full." She then proceeded to eat everything on her plate. Then there was Margie. If Margie was 5 feet tall, I'd be surprised. I stood over a foot taller than her and often found myself inadvertently placing things out of her reach. She was, I imagine, in her late 50s, and her tiny, round body was covered with brown age spots. Her head was topped with a mop of curly, dark red hair kept fairly short. Her face had been lined by her years, and she always wore makeup. Her light brown, painted-on eyebrows rose to a high crest in true Joan Crawford fashion. She wore rouge that was never quite blended well, and lavender eyeshadow, and even though she worked in a hot kitchen with an air conditioner that was very apt to die in summer months, I never once saw her makeup run. Margie was a demanding woman, and when she was around, I would find myself inexplicably doing everything in my power to make sure she got her way. One summer, when the air conditioner broke down again, Bruce, the store's former and not current repairman, drove 2 hours to come help us. He was working on the roof when Margie came to me and said, "The sharpening stone on this roast beef slicer is dull. Go up and see if Bruce has another one." I protested, certain that Bruce had better things to do, but eventually I found myself scaling the ladder to the roof. In mid-July. The poor repairman was cursing quietly to himself as he wrangled wires and tubes inside the huge unit, sweat streaming down his face, plastering his hair to his forehead, staining his shirt, and dripping from the tip of his nose. He was incredulous upon hearing my request, but sent me back to the kitchen to tell Margie that he'd bring her the stone once he was finished up there. I did just that, and was promptly sent back up the ladder with the message that once he was finished up there wasn't soon enough. One day, she asked to speak to me and led me back to the stock room, into a corner where we employees hung our coats and placed our personal items. "I'm getting a divorce from my husband," she said. This was unexpected news. Only weeks before, Margie had told me about the wonderful time that she and her husband had had while traveling in their camper. She never let on that there were any problems. "The other night," she said, "he got drunker and meaner than I've ever seen him, Jason. He's trying to say that it was because of the medicine that he's on for his disability, but I don't care at this point. The other night, for no reason, he beat the shit out of me." Tilting her head back, she pointed to some light red marks on her throat where he had grabbed her. Then, rolling up her sleeve, she revealed a large bruise that had faded into a light green. She explained that it had been purple Saturday morning. Producing something from inside her purse, she said, "Can someone who's disabled do this?" Margie handed me 3 Polaroid photos. One was a close-up of her face, with no makeup. The marks on her neck much darker and much more defined. The second was a wider shot. Margie stood there in a silver nightgown, facing the photographer and holding out her arms. They were covered with dark purple and black splotches and long red scratches. In the third Polaroid, Margie stood in profile. She had pulled up the hem of her nightgown on one side, exposing her entire leg up to her waist. There, I saw the same bruises and abrasions from her ankle to her buttocks. I bowed down and embraced Margie tightly, not knowing what else to do or say. I decided to postpone, for the time being, what I had planned to tell her that day: that I had gotten a better job at Bethel College and would be leaving soon.